Today we'll be looking at 3 item builds for Risk of Rain 2 that I've created. I will try to incorporate at least one white common item and one green uncommon item in each build, as they are the primary drops you will receive. Some builds are hampered by the lack of utility or survivability, so use them at your own discretion. I would suggest adding speed items like Energy Drink, Paul's Goat Hoof, and Red Whip to help you move around the map, as I do not believe they should be counted in the 3 item builds that I am creating. To start off, you can add an additional 1 to 2 items for survivability, like repulsion plates, which negate 5 damage per plate and can be stacked linearly. Or items like Topaz Brooch and Tougher Times. All of these items are white common items that should be easy to pick up early, which will greatly increase your survivability at the cost of having more than 3 items in your build. Each one of these 3 item builds have a very specific task they are meant to do. I've tried to incorporate damage and survivability in each of these builds, but as you may notice, some are purely one or the other. For instance, the damage build 1, which consists of Will-O-the-Wisp, Ceremonial Dagger, and Shaped Glass. This build is intended to be purely offensive and relies on the player's skill to survive the many mechanics in the game. Now I shall talk about the builds themselves. I've created 3 main build types, named healing builds, attack speed builds, and damage builds, which are very easily seen by the dark blue outline. I listed the items from white common all the way to blue lunar on the top of the page for you to tell which color item I am talking about. First off are the healing tank builds. These are the builds you pick if you want to survive until the endgame and provide a huge support for your team. Multi and Engineer excel at survival using the Bustling Fungus builds. Bustling Fungus incorporates huge healing as it stacks linearly. This item works after you have been still for 1 second, and it creates a zone that heals for 4.5% of your total health to every ally within range, and its range is 3 meters. With each stack, you increase the healing by a further 2.25% and a range of 1.5 meters. Now while this might not sound like much, having 20 of these suckers, you'll be healing for 47% of your total health per second, and the range of the heal's area effect is 31 meters. That is freaking insane. Razorwire is a green item that is great for engineer Terrans or melee characters in the game.
Yes, AoE every time you take damage, and especially with characters that do self-damage like this guy here. I can continuously do damage. I'm just gonna chuck my ult on them and just let them auto-attack me. They're lasers and they're just gonna kill themselves effectively. And save it.
This item does 160% damage to 5 enemies within 25 meters, and with each stack it increases the amount of people hit by 2 and range by 10 meters. So with 10 razor wires you'll be hitting 23 targets, and the range you'll be hitting them at is 115 meters, which is an insanely huge area. Now, I'm probably going to butcher this word, but Nakunya's opinion is a red item that stores 100% of the healing as soul energy. After it reaches 10% of maximum health, it will fire a skill that deals 250% of your soul energy as damage, meaning the more of these you stack, the higher the damage boost you will get. This 3 item healing build is by my own opinion one of the strongest all-rounder builds in the game, and like I said, it only requires 3 items. Obviously stacking items like critical damage, bleed, shields, etc. will make this unstoppable, but this is not the purpose of this guide. It's simply here to show you how strong some 3 item builds can be. The rest of the healing builds are pretty self-explanatory. The difference between them are the damage output. If the character excels at close range, e.g. the Mercenary or Acrid, consider build 1. If the character excels at standing still, Engineer or Multi to an extent, then build 2 or 3 is for you. Now lastly, if your character needs to move around a lot, looking at the Poke King Acrid, you can switch out your healing item for the Cautious Slug, which increases your base health regeneration by 3 health points per second outside of combat, and they stack linearly, meaning you can heal for 30 health per second with 10 of these. While this might not seem like much, it will help you survive easily, as you should never really be in melee range of enemies as Acrid using a 3 item build. Now moving on to attack speed builds. The following are rather well known, and often these items are used as stepping stones to 20 plus item builds. But since we are restricted to 3 items per build, I included attack speed builds in this list. Soldier's Syringe, which is a common white item, increases your base attack speed by 15%. and they stack linearly, so having 10 of these will increase your attack speed by 150%. Now remember, I'm trying to incorporate one white item and one green item, plus whatever third item in these builds. So while there are many more items in these color tiers that I could use for attack speed etc, I'll only pick the stronger ones. ATG Missile is one of the strongest on-hit items in the game. Damage output increases by 300% with every stack you get, though it has a 10% chance to activate on hit, which is why building attack speed with this item goes hand in hand. You're increasing the likelihood of proccing this item with the more hits you get. Charge Perforactor also has a 10% proc rate and does 500% damage, which is a pretty intense damage increase for an attack speed build. The only issue is that yellow items are generally more rare than green items and only drop after completing a teleporter event. Though this item can be substituted for Brilliant Behemoth, which is a red item and easier to obtain. There are other on-hit items to choose from, but this one will be the closest in terms of damage increase. Looking at build 2 now, you can see it's similar to build 1 in all items, but we just switched out the charge Perifactor for Brilliant Behemoth. Generally attack speed builds are quite simple and do not involve much sort if you know what the items do. The only thing I would suggest doing before investing too much time is to check out what items stack linearly and compare them to other items. Effectively, Soldier's Syringe is a huge steroid and nothing comes close to equaling in raw attack speed boosts. Most other items have non-linear stacking methods, meaning they do not stack definitely, rather they have a maximum cap they can reach before stacking them becomes pointless. Now we are looking at damage builds. There are some well-known meme builds like Fuel Cells, Royal Capacitor and Gesture of the Drown, which has some of the largest base damage in the game. Though stacking this as a 3-item build will not reach anywhere near the full build in terms of power, but it will keep up with the best of the other builds. When I think of pure damage builds, the first thing that actually comes to my mind is Shaped Glass. This item doubles all your damage, at the price of halving your health. And this item also stacks linearly, meaning you can have an infinite amount of these, and the more you get, the higher your damage will be. Keep in mind, every time you double your damage, you are also halving your health for every item. If you had 100 health and you had 2 Shaped Glass, your health would now be 25. So it's a double-edged sword pretty much. Strongest combination in my opinion is using a crowbar increases your damage to an enemy that is above 90% health by 75% damage. And if you had 20 of these, your threshold to an enemy would be 1500% higher for the first hit above that 90% threshold. In combination with ceremonial daggers, which proc a dagger to fly around after killing an enemy, that does 150% per stack, become a one-shot powerhouse of just 3 items. I do not believe there is a stronger combination of 3 items in this game that can equal this build. It's actually that insane. Just remember you'll have next to no health though, so you'll need to be very mobile or skillful to dodge the monster attacks. Perhaps buy an orange item called Milky Chrysalis, which allows you to temporarily fly so it'll be easy to avoid enemies. It does have a 15-second timer on how long it lasts. You add fuel cells for additional equipment stacks and reduce cooldown on using your item Hypo Feather, which increases your maximum jump count by 1. You get around the map extraordinarily fast. The next build is probably one of the weirdest ones I've thought of. Build 3 involves having repulsion plates as one of your main items. This is an item that blocks 5 damage for every single one you have. You may wonder why I include an obvious armor item in a damage build. The reason that is in combination with large stacks of Razorwire, you can potentially proc some items across the entire map. Using this theory, I searched for an item that would proc on an item affected by it. That item would be the Lunar Special Skill item Essence of Heresy. This item adds a stack of Ruin, which is similar to Bleed or Fire stacks, but it does no damage immediately. Instead, when you activate your new special skill, or your default keybind R, you do 300% damage plus an additional 120% damage for every stack of Ruin you have on that enemy. Now this might not sound like much compared to the other builds in this guide, but if you are using the plates and Razorwire method to hit as many monsters as you can, activating this item can be a map-wide nuke. It will hit anything at all, including monsters you can't even see. This is one of the more scary 3-item builds in the game in my opinion. The only downside is that you have an 8-second downtime between recharges for this ability. 2 other things to consider about this build is that Ruin only lasts 10 seconds on an enemy, Buying multiple essences of heresy, you can add an additional 10 seconds for each stack you have. Increasing the time to get stacks will increase the nuke's damage. But in having more stacks of this item, you'll increase your time between uses by 8 seconds. A fourth item hard counter to this would be stacking the red item Alien Head. Each stack decreases all your skill cooldowns by 25%. Secondly, this relies heavily on your ability to be attacked by enemies that do very low amounts of damage to not kill you, but attack fast enough for there to be a large amount of rune stacks on monsters. Monsters like Mushrooms who shoot a circle of death at you have the lowest damage output, but since the damage ticks so quickly, you can really ramp up your stacks of ruin. So if you're lucky enough to get Mushrooms, you can pretty much nuke every 8 seconds the entire map if you have enough razor wires, which is a pretty cool build considering it's only 3 items, alright? The last damage build I will talk about is build 5. Now this is more of a hybrid damage attack speed build that is just fun to use but is not overpowered. Basically using Soldier's Syringe for the 50% linear attack speed boost and the ATG missile for the damage boost, we add the red item Wake of Vultures. This item gives you an effect of any elite monster you kill. The reason why this can be considered as strong is if you use the Artifact of Honor, which spawns in only elite enemies. Wake of Vultures gives you the power of the enemy you kill, therefore you can apply damage over time via stacks. Overloading and Glacial of Effect explosion attacks, you can cloak yourself and your teammates, and also disable enemies from healing. This one item, upon killing the correct enemies, gives you the effects of dozens of other items combined. With every item that you stack, you're effectively doubling the length of how long this lasts. I have one honorable mention 3 item build. The reason I do call it an honorable mention is because the build damages everything around you, including your drones and your teammates, thus making it a solo build or a build among friends. Use repulsion plates for your white item, razor wire for your green item, and hellfire tincture for your equipment slot. This item ignites all characters in a 15 meter radius for 12 seconds, while dealing 5% of your maximum health a second to yourself, half as much to your allies, and 24 times the damage to monsters. If you and your allies stack at least 1 propulsion plate per 500 health you have, this damage is reduced to a 1 damage tick. So this build is viable as long as you tell your allies. Because let's admit, nothing is more worse than someone using this item or similar effect items that proceed to nuke your entire team and then you end up losing. It's just a huge pain, man. Well, these are just some of my builds. You can check out some of my other guides for more constructed builds, but I just thought this would be a little fun guide of 3 item builds, as eventually if you play on Moonsoon difficulty enough, you can find that it's actually quite easy and you want to try something new. So in the end, I know this is a little unorthodox due to restricting your build to 3 items, but it demonstrates if you stack the correct items you can still be a powerhouse or the beefiest tank healer on your team. Now, thanks for watching and take care.